previously, CNN did a whole big special on her, complete with a reporter who I believe was from India, on how special it was that she was Indian. Let's play this. And actually, there's an important part of the clip, which is also going to give you some insight, perhaps, into who she is and how she thinks that I want you to hear. But let's cue this one up. CNN celebrating that Kamala Harris is Indian.
My mother, who raised me and my sister, was a proud woman. She was a brown woman. She was a woman with a heavy accent.
And her mother, Shamla Gopalan, was also the biggest influence in Kamala Harris's life.
The answer is absolutely yes, Joe.
After the big announcement, Harris's sister wrote in a Twitter post, "You can't know who Kamala Harris is without knowing who our mother was." In 1958, a precocious 19-year-old Indian, Gopalan traveled thousands of miles from her home and family to pursue a doctorate in nutrition and endocrinology in America. She soon became an active civil rights crusader while studying at UC Berkeley.
But once she went there, she almost felt free. And she took part in politics. She used to bring a whole series of literature, leftist literature from Karl Popper's, he was a great philosopher.
Let's listen to that again. So I think this is the uncle. This is Harris's uncle, because a lot of her family lives back, of course, still in India. And he's talking about how she was a civil rights crusader at UC Berkeley. I mean, this was at a time, ladies and gentlemen, where frankly, you're a civil rights crusader in Berkeley, California, University of California, Berkeley. I think you probably are pretty left, like pretty radical. She's got a reputation now for being pretty radical. Well, her mom, I guess, was pretty radical. Let's listen to that again.
In 1958, a precocious 19-year-old Indian, Gopalan traveled thousands of miles from her home and family to pursue a doctorate in nutrition and endocrinology in America. She soon became an active civil rights crusader while studying at UC Berkeley.
But once she went there, she almost felt free. And she took part in politics. She used to bring a whole series of literature, leftist literature from Karl Popper's.
Okay. So she's bringing home leftist literature. That's what he's telling you. She's bringing home leftist literature. She's part of that whole UC Berkeley movement. I mean, look, it's great that she felt inclined to participate in politics in a way that maybe she didn't feel like she was able to in India. Great, good for her. But at the same time, I think it's important to understand the context around which Kamala Harris was raised, because you consider the mother who's bringing home the leftist literature, right? And she's like this radical out at UC Berkeley. You consider the father who's the post-Keynesian economist, which basically is like a form of Marxism economics. And you get a profile, I think, of somebody who's quite different than mainstream America, all right, for whatever it's worth. Now, we can debate whether capitalism on its margins is really, I mean, I would just say it's the best system you've got. I mean, you try anything else, but you can debate whether or not it could be perfected, whether it could be improved upon. But we're capitalists in America, right? We're not socialists. We're certainly not extreme Marxists. And let's hope that's not what she is. But frankly, guys, we don't really even know. Because when it came to the one policy that she was supposed to have some responsibility for, that would be the U.S. border with Latin America, she just completely flaked out. Did nothing. All right? Like she talked about the root causes of immigration, wouldn't even go to the border. Think about that forever. So she does not have a track record of anything we can even look at and point to and say, okay, she'd be a good president of the United States of America. I mean, Biden, for all his faults, right? You could at least look back at a track record. But with her, there's not a lot there. She's got some social stuff going on. Economically, I don't think that this would be good. I really don't, because I think she's going to tax everyone to death in the spirit of somehow redistributing wealth. I mean, that's not a policy that would work. It kind of reminds me of Barack Obama, if you would, who was sort of a socialist. And if she's handpicked by him Does that mean we're getting deeper and deeper and deeper into this socialism economic environment, which, listen, is not going to pay off? I'm telling you, you go around the world, anywhere you look, and you see over and over again that this system, while theoretically, I get it, it sounds appealing, everybody's equal, everybody contributes, everybody does their part in society, it never works. It's never worked. And it's one sob story after another. So I think you got to think about who this woman is and what her background is and where she really stands on the economy. Because look, we're successful as a nation. We want to continue having that kind of success. It means you can't just open up the border and bring everyone in. I mean, look, this is what they're dealing with all over Europe right now. I've been traveling both in Italy and in Ireland. And look, immigration is an issue in all of these places. Why? Because you've got small countries that cannot handle this from an economic standpoint. Sure, there's some magnanimous people, very altruistic people in all of these places, including in the United States of America. We want to do the right thing. We want to help. But can we? I mean, at some point, the system fundamentally cannot support what you're asking of it. And that's where the realism kicks in. And I don't think Kamala Harris is really a realist, except when it comes to her own political career. And then she's a little all too real. But we've seen over and over again throughout the world that this socialist Marxist system, it just does not work. Ultimately, it creates a lot of power for those that are in control and are on the top. The latest and greatest example being, of course, Venezuela. Venezuela, ladies and gentlemen, where Nicolas Maduro is declaring that he just won the latest election, even though nobody believes that. Like, nobody believes that. So Maria Corina Machado, who is a very sort of outspoken, very strong woman, conservative woman who's been leading the opposition against Maduro for years now, and really had hoped to become the first female president of Venezuela. She's absolutely fantastic, a total dynamo. She's been on the show. I really, really like her a lot. And she has great ideas for how to get Venezuela back on track. Well, he wouldn't let her run. Somehow they came up with a whole bunch of nothing so that she could not run in that election. And so another guy ran with her blessing and backing. And Maria Corina Machado, she's a really smart woman. She actually put together a system so that she could track all of the votes that were coming in, right, via the exit polls. What did they discover? They discovered that there's no way in HELL that Nicolas Maduro ever could have won this thing. And yet he's declaring this landslide victory. And not just by like a little bit, but by a lot. So everybody now is saying, oh, wait a second. I mean, even Antony Blinken, he's over in Japan, he's like having to weigh in on the Venezuelan election. He's like, wait a second, hold on here. And so this is, in my estimation, one of the dangers of this Marxist style mentality where it's you win at all costs, right? Because very quickly, very soon, it becomes that kind of dictatorship, which we've seen in so many countries that have employed this kind of economic theory. So down in Venezuela, you get Nicolas Maduro saying, oh, no, I won. In fact, I'm going to come out with the proof. Well, that'll be interesting. That'll be really interesting. I'm sure the voting machine company that's involved in tons of litigation here in the U.S. is just going to love that one, right? Not a great look for them. We'll see what actually materializes. Again, I think I'm going to go with Maria Corina Machado's information and trust that a little bit more, shall we say, than the Marxist socialist dictator down in Venezuela. It's a shame because this is a country, Venezuela, that we should have a terrific relationship with. After all, they're sitting on the world's biggest source of oil outside of the Middle East. You got to go to Saudi Arabia to even find anything close to what they've got in what's known as the Orinoco region in Venezuela. I've traveled there. I've seen it firsthand. I mean, this is a very oil-rich area. The problem is it's thick, tar-like oil. It's hard to get up out of the ground. So you need technology, a lot of American technology in order to get at this stuff. But what did Maduro do? He did what Chavez did. He kicked all the American companies out. Nobody can get at the oil. He's kind of shooting himself in the foot, but he doesn't care, right? Because he's doing well and his people are doing well. It doesn't matter what's happening to the rest of the population. I look at what's going on there and I worry about us. I worry about the United States of America because think of how quickly that country deteriorated. I mean, just over a couple of decades. In fact, I remember well, I was a young analyst at Goldman Sachs. We were actually covering Venezuela when he first came into power. And that was around 1999. So it doesn't take long. It does not take long for a country to fail. And that country went from having the highest per capita income to the lowest in Latin America. So think about that, ladies and gentlemen, when you think about whether or not we're going to get somebody like this Kamala Harris with her, sort of background in pretty extreme political and economic thought coming into the White House. That's pretty scary.